Tanse, good afternoon. I'm Krisanach Gate. Welcome to APTN National News. Stats Canada has just released new numbers on Indigenous-owned business survival rate and performance. It said between 2016 and 2021, Indigenous businesses did not see a significant increase in business ownership due to challenges like limited access to capital, financial barriers, and higher operational costs in remote areas. The report also found there was almost a 20% chance an Indigenous business was more likely to exit the market. The performance gap is also 2 times higher in rural areas compared to businesses in urban centers. Stats Canada says the report will be useful for policymakers who want to help support Indigenous people with social and economic integration. Over 55,000 postal workers have walked off the job since Friday, halting all mail and parcel service by Canada Post. The union representing the workers says it wants improvements in wages, benefits, and working conditions. Negotiations between the union and Canada Post have been ongoing for a year. Canada Post says so far both parties remain far apart on an agreement as the strike continues this week. Lydia Thorpe, the Australian Indigenous senator who heckled King Charles during his visit to Australia last month, is now facing formal criticism by other senators for her actions against the King. On Monday, a motion was carried 46-12 to censure Thorpe as a symbolic gesture to show their disapproval of her actions. Senate Leader Penny Wong said Thorpe's outburst is, quote, part of a trend that we do see internationally, which quite frankly, we do not need in Australia. During King Charles' visit, Thorpe interrupted the proceedings by shouting, "You are not our king, you are not sovereign," and told him he had committed genocide against Indigenous Australians. Following the censure, Thorpe said she will repeat her rant if Charles ever returns. Meanwhile, a member of the Green Party who opposed the censure said, the bubble of white privilege that encapsulates this parliament is a systemic issue. A man from the Bloodvein First Nation in Manitoba is speaking out about his recent medical procedure that went drastically wrong. Last October, Jason Kennedy needed an emergency operation to amputate his right leg. However, when he woke up from surgery, he discovered medical professionals amputated the wrong leg. Despite this incident creating so many life changes, Kennedy still has a positive outlook.
Like I said, I was devastated. I was heartbroken.
Jason Kennedy is currently recovering from his recent surgery, staying at the Seven Oaks General Hospital in Winnipeg. Despite losing his wrong leg to an amputation at Grace Hospital, his spirit remains high, along with his humor.
Like, I gotta get upper body strength if I'm gonna be in a wheelchair. Like, I'm hoping for a hovercraft at least. like, gee whiz, somebody invent that, please, I'll be the first one to try it out.
On October 23rd, the 48-year-old who has diabetes went to Seven Oaks because he was in pain and his right foot was bleeding. Medical staff determined an amputation was needed due to a previous bone infection he was living with. With the worry that the infection could get worse and enter his bloodstream, the amputation was done on October 31st by a surgeon and medical staff at Winnipeg's Grace Hospital.
Like, I was under the impression that they were going to take the leg that had the infection.
However, when Kennedy woke up, he realized the wrong leg was amputated. He says it felt like a bad dream. But then he recalled to his teachings he received from his grandparents.
Having that forgiveness within ourselves, and to forgive yourself. And, you know, we can't judge and blame others, you know, for whatever happens in our lives. We leave that up to Creator.
Kennedy says the surgeon at Grace Hospital and 2 other medical staff apologized for what happened.
The surgeon came in and told me he was apologizing, and he apologized to me. He said, "I'm sorry, I took the wrong foot." Like, gee whiz, I know that you took the wrong foot. And I told him straight out, like, I wanted to burst out freaking out at him, but that's not the way we grew up. We grew up with understanding, forgiveness.
A critical incident review of what went wrong is now underway by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. They say they can't comment due to patient confidentiality. Manitoba's health minister declined an interview request with APTN News, but said in a statement, a review is investigating whether racial bias played a role. Uzoma Asagwara, Manitoba's health minister, added, "The health and safety of patients in this province is my top priority. I want to extend my sympathies for the patient and their family. This is a heartbreaking situation that no one deserves to go through." The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling for immediate action and a full and transparent investigation into the incident. They are saying, quote, "This tragic error, which left Mr. Kennedy in shock and disbelief upon waking from anesthesia, highlights ongoing systemic issues within healthcare delivery to First Nations people." Kennedy, who is a commercial fisherman and was previously homeless in Winnipeg, appreciates all the care and support he has received following the incident, including from Lisa Young, who is chief of Bloodvein First Nation, and his cousin.
You know, Jason taught me how to harvest rabbits when we were little, and, you know, going through the bush trails and doing all those outdoors type things. Now I know he's not going to be able to do that as freely as he could before. So just a whole life-changing scenario for him, and it's devastating. It shouldn't have happened.
Kennedy is now exploring his legal options and speaking with a lawyer about compensation. Medical staff are also trying to save his right foot with antibiotics so he doesn't lose that leg too. For now, Kennedy hopes his story will bring necessary change within Manitoba's healthcare system so that an incident like this never happens again.
Everybody should be put in place and to know what their duties are and what has to happen.
To BC now, where a video uploaded to social media is raising some serious questions about the treatment of a visibly Indigenous 16-year-old girl by 6 security guards at a busy shopping mall in Surrey. APTN's Tina House has the story and a warning: some viewers may find this video of the incident disturbing.
This video was uploaded onto social media on November the 13th that shows a 16-year-old girl who doesn't wish to be identified being detained by 6 security guards at the Guildford Town Centre Mall in Surrey, BC.
Yeah, you're traumatizing her. Let go of her. Let go of her now. Let go of her. Let go. You're using unnecessary force. You don't need to hold on to her like this. What are you doing? Why are you putting your knee in her back? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
After what was supposed to be a fun time for who we will call Jane and her 2 non-Indigenous friends at the mall turned into a nightmare after security guards questioned only the Indigenous girl about stealing from the Victoria's Secret store. After the teen showed them inside her bag, which had nothing in it, a security guard then allegedly slapped her phone out of her hand and smashed it on the ground.
They had me outside first, and then they brought me inside, and that's when all of the other security guards came and they all cornered me. And then that's when I started feeling like I was being trapped, and like, I don't know, I felt really cornered and like, I felt really claustrophobic by being surrounded by all these security guards, and that just made me feel really inhumane. It made me feel like not human, being like so surrounded by security guards and getting pinned to the ground after I showed them I had nothing.
Jane says when one of the security guards had her on the ground, she couldn't breathe for up to a minute. According to the teen, the entire incident lasted for approximately 10 minutes until police showed up. The Surrey RCMP confirmed that they did go to the mall. Their statement reads in part, on November the 12th, 2024 at 8:43 p.m., police responded to a report of an assault on a security guard at Guildford Town Centre. Police were advised that the suspect female was being detained by the mall security. Our officer attended and arrested the suspect female for assault. According to the mall security, the female allegedly spat toward a security guard and was subsequently detained. The suspect, who is a youth, was released at scene to their guardian. Investigation is ongoing, and all aspects of what transpired are being looked at. But Jane's mother says her daughter was not arrested or charged, and she believes her daughter was racially profiled.
Shame on you guys. You guys are grown, big men. There's no need to be handling anybody like that or even put your hands on anybody at all. Like, it's very shameful.
Sino General is her stepfather and says their daughter is traumatized over what happened.
Speaking with her after and then speaking with the officer was talked to her right away and was more on her side, like right away, like, okay, she was like, something's off. And she went and watched the TV camera in the mall, and she saw that she was offering her bag, showing that, hey, I ain't got nothing. Look, I ain't got nothing. And they still went in and grabbed her. And so, like, that's where the officer was like, they should have de-escalated. They didn't. So that was an assault. That was forcible confinement, public mischief, because they singled her out as being Indigenous.
APTN reached out to Paladin Security for comment, but we did not get a reply before the story went to air. Tina House, APTN National News, Surrey.
The RCMP have been using body-worn cameras in select communities, but now they'll start being rolled out nationally as early as next week. Sarah Connors gives us the details and what this will mean for RCMP interactions with Indigenous people going forward.
In September, 34-year-old Stephen Igi Didem, a member of the Elsipogtog First Nation, was shot and killed by the RCMP after they responded to a wellness check. RCMP officers who responded were not wearing body-worn cameras.
So that's going to make it very difficult for the serious incident response team to properly investigate.
This professor of criminology and criminal justice says cameras could have helped prove what happened.
Because sadly, all we have are the two responding officers' accounts, and that's it.
But starting Monday, the RCMP will begin rolling out body-worn cameras for all frontline staff. Over the next 9 months, approximately 1,000 frontline officers per month will begin using body-worn cameras. According to RCMP spokeswoman Tanya Taga, by this time next year, 90% of frontline members will be wearing them.
The use of body-worn cameras and the digital evidence management system will be a national standard for all frontline general duty police officers across the country.
Since late August, at least 10 Indigenous people have died following interactions with law enforcement. The RCMP hopes the cameras will help improve relationships with Indigenous people.
So it's, I think, a positive initiative that could help build trust and transparency between the police and the Indigenous communities we serve.
These body cams, I think, are going to make things easier or more streamlined for us.
This criminal defense lawyer says the presence of cameras may cause the RCMP to be more cautious in their interactions with Indigenous people.
So the police, it might make them be a little more slow to react in that type of fashion, and holding them accountable for their actions at the end of the day.
But others say body-worn cameras aren't foolproof.
Sometimes the evidence that has been used from body-worn cameras in court, sometimes it's proved useful, other times it has not, because the images have been grainy, the recording wasn't as good as they had hoped it would be.
Officers are responsible for turning their cameras on prior to arriving to a call, a policy the RCMP calls seatbelt off, camera on. It says supervisors will be required to review footage to ensure officers are in compliance. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Earlier this month, Ashley Collingbull, the recently crowned Miss Universe Canada, traveled to Mexico City to compete internationally in this year's 73rd Miss Universe pageant. Here's a preview of Collingbull during the finals.
I'm the first Indigenous woman from my country to win this title and to ever represent at Miss Universe. So I've made history already.
The pageant finals happened this past Saturday in Mexico City, and while Collingbull didn't win the title, she still made it to the top 12, competing with more than 120 countries. Collingbull posted to social media saying she was honored to make history as the first Indigenous First Nations woman to be on the Miss Universe International stage. She was also proud to showcase Indigenous designs and bring awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls by wearing her MMIW pin. Collingbull, who is from the Enoch Cree Nation in Alberta, hopes that all of her work will inspire the next generation of young Indigenous leaders. In the end, Denmark was crowned this year's Miss Universe. We have more stories for you after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. A group of First Nations leaders in support of green energy from British Columbia recently took part in the COP29 climate change conference in Baku, Azerbaijan this week. Fraser Needham has the story.
The leaders are part of the First Nations Climate Initiative. Tilkazko First Nation Chief Wes Sam is part of the delegation. He says the conference is an opportunity to talk with other Indigenous leaders around the globe who are experiencing similar climate change challenges.
All with issues similar to ours, left with the results of things that were beyond our control, but now that we have to live with. Same issues, forest fires, droughts, food security issues, and looking for a way to collaborate and work together to get out of this through green energy and converting to green energy and looking at different industries that have that.
Sam is also the chair of Cool Power, a group of 11 First Nations pursuing ownership and development of renewable energy transmission projects in northwestern BC. He says through initiatives like Cool, First Nations are setting an example on how renewable energy can be produced in a sustainable way.
You can't treat the world like this, for the past 100 or more years and not expect consequences. We were brought up in a different way to respect and work with the land and our environment, and disrespecting that got us to this position. What better, as I said earlier, what better than the First Nations leading the charge on, trying to stabilize and work with our local environments.
This year's climate change conference wraps up on November 22nd. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We now want to tell you about last week's web poll results. We asked, did you participate in any Remembrance Day ceremonies? 31% of you said yes, and 69% of you voted no. Next, we asked, do you think the passing of Honourable Murray Sinclair will impact ongoing reconciliation efforts in Canada? A majority were between yes, somewhat, and yes, significantly at 32% and 25% respectively, while 28% of you had voted no and a few were unsure at 15%. And lastly, we asked, did the results of the US presidential election change your outlook on Canadian politicians? Majority of you voted no at 46%, while the yes vote is at 37%, and 13% said it would somewhat affect, while 4% were unsure. Thanks to all who took the time to vote. We have a new set of questions up at aptnnews.ca. Time now for a short break, but when we return, we have weather and more stories for you. Stay with us. Starting on the east, sunny in St. John's at 11, Charlottetown, partly cloudy at 5. Cartwright 3, La Grande River 2. 2 in Saguenay, Quebec City 3. Peterborough 11, Sarnia 8 and sunny. Sudbury 6, Wawa 5. God's Lake 2, The Paw -3. 0 in Gimli and 0 in Dauphin. 0 in Yorkton, -1 in Saskatoon. -3 in La Ronge, Buffalo Narrows, sun, and -4. -7 in Peace River, Fort McMurray -5. 3 in Medicine Hat, -2 in Lethbridge. 2 in Penticton, Campbell River, 7. -1 in Prince George, Smithers, 0. -15 in Watson Lake, -28 in Dawson. -25 in Yellowknife, Wrigley, -20. -22 in Colville Lake, -22 in Inuvik. -1 in Chesterfield, -12 in Cambridge Bay. And Iqaluit, -5, Aglulik, -1. Next time you pull money out of your pocket, take a closer look because there is a new coin in town. APTN's Kim Sullivan is here to tell us all about it.
Now Our Change celebrates Inuit Nunangat and the distinct ways of life, vibrant cultures, and rich heritage that highlight Inuit unity and strength.
On it, you will see the words Inuit-Nunangat, a vast area that encompasses land, water, and ice. It is the Inuit homeland from which its people find their strength, resilience, unity, and identity. It is also the inspiration behind the latest commemorative $2 circulation coin released by the Royal Canadian Mint. The Royal Canadian Mint, Inuit Tapirut Kanatami, and 4 Inuit artists, each representing one of the 4 regions of Inuit-Nunangat, Nunatsiavut, Nunavut, Nunavik, and the Inuvialuit settlement region, worked closely together in real time through a series of virtual meetings. One of those artists is Tamasi Magnat.
We spoke quite often over the telephone. Internet wasn't always reliable, so we tried a bit. But once we worked together, once we worked on our own artwork, we shared them amongst the group. So we got to see what we made, and then we started putting pieces together, modifying our own images, so it turns into a unified image on a coin.
On the outer rim of the coin, we find a traditional pattern and 4 distinct ulus, one from each artist's region.
We heard growing up of Nuleayo. You can look into the story, but her hands were cut, and then in the water, when her hands started bleeding, they turned into animals. And growing up, we're told to respect the animals, not just to kill them, but if we do kill them, we have to eat them. So with the importance of animals, the relationship we have with animals, we wanted to represent them along with Nuleayo.
In the center of the tuni, sea creatures float alongside Nuleayuk, spirit of the sea. This new $2 circulation coin is limited to a mintage of 3 million coins, of which 2 million will be colored. Limited edition special wrap rolls of uncirculated coins are also available for purchase through the Mint. Kim Sullivan, APTN National News, Montreal.
Thank you, Kim. Anishinaabe journalist turned author Tanya Taga made a stop in Winnipeg during her 3-month cross-country book tour for her latest work called The Knowing. That came out earlier this fall. T.R. Wheatley will have a full story tonight, but here's a quick peek at their conversation.
Who was Annie? Where did she go? In 1930, she was gone.
The Knowing follows Tanya Taga's journey to find out what happened to her great-great-grandmother Annie Carpenter and where she was buried. Her inspiration to write the book, the final report from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
And that was a volume on unmarked graves and missing children. And at the time, that the TRC came out, they said that there was about 3,200 children that never came home from Indian residential school. And I was always fascinated by that. I wanted to know what happened to these kids. Why don't we know more about them? And how come no one's talking about them? Instead, in 2015, everyone was talking about genocide. Oh my gosh, they've used the word genocide.
Taga said besides finding her own relative, she also found 32 Indigenous people in an unmarked graveyard. I'm T.R. Wheatley. Coming up tonight on APTN News, a conversation with Tanya Taga about her book, her career, and the path of reconciliation.
Thank you, TR, and you definitely don't want to miss that. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday, November 18th. We'll be back again in a few hours with more stories for your evening newscasts. From everyone at APTN National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Exe.